Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Temple City Council for Thursday, October 1st, 2015. Please rise as Brian Vanacek, President of the SPJST, leads us in the invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Wilma Dorsey of the Colonial Heritage Chairman. Brian.
Dear God, lover of all, we praise you for giving Jesus as our Savior. We come to you first on behalf of the families and friends of the young people who were killed and the many who are injured today in the horrific shooting in Oregon. We pray that they find comfort in your loving arms and in the midst of such tragic loss. May your grace and peace strengthen each and every one of us in the days and weeks ahead. Look on us with love, Father, and protect us with your love. And now, dear God, we pray for our global community. You who have the immense power to hold heaven and earth in a single piece, let the design of your great love enlighten and heal the relationships in our world which have been torn by misunderstanding, by violence, and by war. Give peace to your people, peace among nations, peace in our homes, peace in this great city of Temple, Texas, and peace in our hearts. We ask all this through Jesus, your Son and our brother. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both. Has the opportunity for public comments. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may sign up to do so prior to this meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. No discussion or final action will be taken. Got Mr. Milton Hensley signed up?
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
I'm Milton Hensley, 301 Mitchell Drive. My granddaughter's over here, Lana Blackman. Someone said it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but he would be one not to say so till he tried. And that is what is happening at the Hodge Cemetery. We have been offered much help, and it is really amazing. It started with the article in the Temple Daily Telegram. Then Gary Smith, Scoutmaster of Boy Scout Troop 101, said that he wanted to help, and he'll have about 15 scouts. The scouts are also furnishing ice chests, ice, and water cans. Nella Sperling, with the International Baccalaureate, is going to have 10 students that will help. One of the things that I want the baccalaureate students to do, and so does Nella Sperling, is to do genealogical studies on these different sites and to find out where they came from, why they came to Texas, and any relations that they have at other places, and then they will make a callback to them if we can find someone. And I'm sure the people that's in Kentucky or Tennessee or Carolinas were wondering about their kinfolks that came to Texas. So we'll find out. The startup date is October the 24th. This was set by the coordination with the school activities. The retired federal employees will help. The Bell County Historical Commission Cemetery Committee has volunteered 5 members. Don't tell Tanya Gray with Keep America Beautiful unless you want it done. She, tomorrow, and Commissioner Judy Morales is going to be with the group, and they're going to start cleaning up the cemetery tomorrow. They don't wait till the 24th the way everybody else does. They want to get a head start. She's going to be with a group of students from Temple College and Mary Hardin Baylor, correct? Yes. Mr. Joe Mudd has been a great help. Contacted him, and he was ready to go, and he is a real lifesaver. He is going to have a mower to go in and mow the places that are accessible, and this is going to save a lot of time. We won't have to cut down a lot of weeds and things. He's going to make available a dumpster, what they call the work wagon, and with helpers to assist. There will be a porta potty in place. That, to me, that's one of the essentials that you got to have. The genealogical group has volunteered to assist the International Baccalaureate students, and I met with the group today, and they are ready to go.
Mr. Hensley, if you don't mind.
A man by the name of John and his wife is Helen Snelson has done a lot of research, and from what I can find out, that Mrs. Snelson, Helen, is the last that we could find that's descendants of the cemetery.
Mr. Hensley?
Is it 3 minutes?
It is. It's just a little over, but I always enjoy hearing you.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you very much. Mr. James Thurston.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me here. My name is James Thurston. I'm the Chief Executive Officer with the United Way of Central Texas, serving Temple, Belton, East Bell County. And I'm here before you to encourage your support for from the General Fund for funding for the United Way SOAR Collaborative. That stands for Savings, Assets, Opportunities, and Results. It's an individual development account program that we're working on in partnership with several organizations in town to provide an incentivized savings and financial literacy program to help encourage more low to moderate income individuals in our community build the pathways that they need to lift themselves above the poverty line and become more financially self-sufficient. I'd like to just provide a brief overview of the program for those who might not be familiar with it. The program's set up over a 2-year period of time. The individual enters into a shared savings account with the United Way and our community partners. For every dollar that individual deposits into that savings account, it's matched $1 from a local funding source, of which we're requesting your partial support, as well as $1 from a federal funding program, which we have already secured the funding for. In order to receive the total match funds, the participant also has to take a comprehensive financial literacy curriculum, as well as an asset-specific training to really develop the skills they need to be able to manage that asset. The funds are allowed to be directed towards the purchase of a new home or post-secondary education or training. I should also mention that the individuals need to be employed, working, and earning income in order to participate. So this is really the difference between kind of that hand out versus a hand up. What we're doing is partnering with these individuals to invest in their future and break the cycle of generational poverty and be able to invest resources that will build assets for the city of Temple. I think with that as well, there have been several impact studies that have been done on this. This has been shown, the evidence demonstrates that this is an effective strategy. Several cities across the country have already participated in this type of program and are already leading the way, and there's a national movement, and so it's really an innovative solution, and I would hope that Temple would join us in being part of it to offer more viable solutions to folks in our community. So thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thurston. Mr. Chris Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Chris Jones with CLEAT, and I'm here speaking for TPA today with regards to the meet and confer items on the agenda today. First, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the staff, Lacey and Kayla and Nan, who worked with us over the last month after the council ordered the certification election to get that process in place and have it go off without a hitch. I want to tell you, too, I was really impressed with the presentation that Kayla put together on the meet and confer process. I thought it was outstanding and dealt with all the issues. I wanted to say couple of things about the process. First, the city of Amarillo, the city council there adopted the process since we last talked about this issue unanimously. We're seeing more and more cities use this process to truly deal locally with local control of their police department, because you are under State Civil Service 143. So if there are issues that you want to change locally, you can't do that because of the state law. Just a few things that some cities have changed in their meet and confer agreements. The number of appointed positions below the chief, such as deputy chiefs, you can add those positions under a meet and confer agreement. You can extend the amount of time that a promotional exam lasts from 1 year to multiple years. So you don't have to have a promotional exam every year for every promotional position in the police department. You can make changes to your disciplinary process. All of those issues that are restricted in the civil service law give you the ability to make those changes locally by meeting and talking to your police representatives, and do that on a local basis. So we think it's a positive. The ultimate thing is that you don't have to do anything. By granting recognition, you don't get it's not collective bargaining. You're not tied into a situation like they're in San Antonio, where they're at odds with each other because they can't reach an agreement, but they're stuck in a process that is mandatory. And this is not a mandatory process. It is totally permissive, and as Kayla said in the presentation, it's interest-based, so that the two sides get together and there are things that they want to change mutually. You can do it without having to go to the legislature and request changes in the law, et cetera, et cetera. So we are really appreciative, too, that the City Council has done due diligence into looking into this issue, considering all the facts, and we would really urge you to support the TPA and your local police officers tonight who go out and put that badge on and put their lives on the line every day to serve the citizens of this great city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item 3, we have some proclamations. Brian Vanacek, would you come up to the front? Yakshamas? I don't know anything past that, but that's my old Spanish teacher over there, and I was trying to impress her like I had remembered like more than one language. But Brian, if I could read a proclamation for Czech Heritage Month now.
Certainly.
Whereas the month of October typically brings many festivals throughout the state of Texas to celebrate and honor the heritage of this state's Czech descendants. Whereas in the primary period of migration from Czech lands, over 250,000 people of Czech ancestry arrived in Texas to make this place their home. Since that time, the number and stature of Czech descendants living in Texas has grown tremendously, and there are well over 1 million people living in all areas of the state and all walks of life who can claim Czech heritage. Whereas Texans of Czech ancestry take great pride in sharing with the rest of the state their contributions in the areas of art, music, literature, food, folklore, and many other fine customs that are part of Texas' rich, diverse culture. And whereas this pride is displayed annually in the month of October by Czech heritage societies throughout the state as they stage various festivals, some of which have been passed down from generation to generation. Now therefore I, Daniel A. Dunn, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim October 2015 as Czech Heritage Month in the City of Temple, Texas, and I encourage all citizens to recognize the significant and lasting contributions made to the entire state of Texas by persons of Czech descent. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this the first day of October 2015. And would you like to say a few things about Czech Heritage Month? Sorry. I think we're on. Are we on?
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Perfect.
Hello?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, great. Again, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for issuing the proclamation. Yes, October is Czech Heritage Month. It has been ever since 1999 when then Governor Bush issued the proclamation there with the 76th legislature. And again, we're very, very proud of that, certainly. And, you know, being of Czech heritage extraction. But we had a meeting at the home office today here in Temple, and one of the things we talked about, everybody's proud of their heritage and culture, obviously. You know, it's your background, it's where you come from. And on October 24th of the month, we also have United Nations Day. So that celebrates everyone's heritage and culture. So let's all celebrate this month together. And if y'all want to get together for a celebration, next Friday at the William Courtney home, we'll be on site there with the veterans, and we're going to be having a Czech Heritage Day celebration. The event starts about 10 o'clock So we invite everybody to come by and celebrate. We've got music, we've got food, and we hope that some of you guys will be joining us, and ladies, of course, also. We hope that you'll be joining us and celebrate Czech Heritage Month and United Nations Day, too.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for being here. Absolutely. Now, I have a proclamation on National Colonial Heritage Month. Yes, ma'am. Whereas the Governor Samuel Matthews chapter of the National Society Colonial Dames 17th Century is sponsoring National Colonial Heritage Month during the month of October 2015. Whereas National Colonial Heritage Month brings to mind the first courageous settlers who arrived in America and who determined the direction for the formation of our country. Whereas the members of this society, by virtue of their lineal descent from those early arrivals, feel an obligation to work for the preservation and priceless legacy that these early arrivals left to all American citizens. And whereas the National Colonial Heritage members continue to convey the true meaning of their inheritance by reminding us that our privilege to live in a free country has stemmed from loving our country, obeying its laws, respecting its flag, and defending it against all enemies. Now therefore I, Daniel A. Dunn, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2015 as National Colonial Heritage Month in the City of Temple, Texas. And I encourage all citizens to observe this month as a means of reinforcing the priceless legacy that we inherit with our citizenship in order to help preserve our rich culture and heritage with deep respect for the principles upon which our great country was founded. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this the first day of October 2015. Thank you. And would you like to say a few things and
Yes, but I don't need a microphone.
Well, yeah, but then the people on TV can't hear you. It's okay. It's kind of a secret mic.
I was going to use my school teacher voice. We want to thank you, and we want to remind you, even though our ancestors were here in the 1600s, no matter how long you have been here, it's important that our heritage be preserved and that our history and the things of the past not fall through the cracks. And we appreciate all of you helping us in doing that. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Did you want me in it?
Yes.
Okay, I just stood there. I just sat there, and it's like, maybe you don't want me in the picture. I'm sorry.
Now we know what kind of student he was.
Well, we don't need to talk about what kind of student I was.
Thank you all.
We'll see y'all later. All right, item 4, under bond items, receiver report on the pricing and sale of the general obligation refunding and improvement bonds and the utility system revenue bonds. Mr. Wegmiller.
Thank you, Mayor, Council members. Dan Wegmiller with Specialized Public Finance. The update for you today on the bond sale of your general obligation bonds and your utility system bonds that took place last week. We'll start with the rating affirmation that's shown up on the screen. As part of the process to sell bonds, we went through a bond rating presentation. Your mayor, staff members went up to Dallas and met with Standard & Poor's and made the presentation. I think it's worth noting S&P affirmed the AA rating that the city has on the general obligation bonds and the utility bonds. The fact that your ratings are the same for both GEO and utility speak to the strength of both of those funds. Often you'll see the utility slightly below just because of the subjectivity to revenue streams over the course of year-to-year consumption. That said, it also is important to recognize the AA rating is 2 notches away from the highest rating possible, which is natural AAA. So there's AA, AA plus, and then natural AAA. So you're near the highest level possible of bond ratings. In their report that they issue, and it's also, the report is great feedback for you all, but the real purpose of that report is to give investors an assessment of what kind of credit quality the city of Temple is. And these investors are from all over the country. The rating reflects S&P's opinion of the city's following factors: very strong management with strong financial policies and practices under the S&P financial assessment methodology. Strong is the highest level they give under the financial assessment. So you're at the highest level you can possibly be, and that's the exception, not the rule, as far as cities across the state. So you're at the highest level possible. Strong budgetary flexibility, very strong liquidity, and strong institutional framework score. They also note that the rating, they assign a stable outlook reflecting their view that the city will sustain its very strong budgetary flexibility, strong liquidity, and management. In addition, they expect the city will continue to benefit from the stabilizing presence of Fort Hood and healthcare providers of VA and Baylor Scott and White. We note that they also provide an assessment of the future, a downside scenario and upside scenario. The downside scenario is only tied to any changes to your reserves or financial position. That's pretty safe to assume you all are not veering off in any other separate direction. So the downside risk is really non-existent to the investor public. The upside risk is very much one facet. Cities' wealth and income levels increasing to strong levels. That's just something we continue to see change over time. That's something that through economic development will continue to occur, but there's much more upside opportunity for the city of Temple and the bond rating moving forward. The debt profile moderating, they already factor in your CIP, your future debt plans. Debt is about 10% of their total picture. The picture really focuses on economy, financial performance, and other measures. With that, they noted at the end of the rating presentation that the City of Temple presentation really left them without questions. The presentation answered their economic questions, their financial performance, debt plans for the future, and left them in a very comfortable position to go back to committee. That is a consistent theme we hear regarding the City of Temple in your presentations and your reporting. They noted the website and just the financial practices you have. On to the next page is the summary of final pricing, which took place last week. The underwriting team did an exceptional job of selling your bonds. They were also given an exceptional credit. And just to touch on some of the high points on this page, we refinanced part of your outstanding debt. Those issues carried interest rates between 4 and 4.625%. Through the refinancing on both the utility and primarily GO debt, the savings early on we're looking at just over $500,000 in savings. After pricing, we actually came just under $800,000 in savings, so nearly $300,000 over what we saw back in August. The other thing to point out, the interest rates, we estimated roughly 4% going in through budgetary process and into the issue. We came in at 3.34% on the GO issue. We came in at also 3.34% on the utility system revenue bonds. The bonds were so sought after in the market. When we went through pricing last week, we had 3 to 6 times the orders for the bonds that we were selling. The market was really reaching out to try to pick up the quality of these bonds. As a result of that, last week, from the morning when they went out to take orders, they came back and they adjusted the interest rates by 2 to 5 basis points. So within that morning, we saw the interest costs reduced by nearly $170,000 just because of the amount of orders coming in for the City of Temple bonds. State Farm was one of the big buyers of the bonds. And you're seeing more and more high-quality buyers stepping in to want the bonds for the city of Temple. It, again, was an outstanding sale, hit the market at a good time. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have regarding the process or the sale.
Thank you, Dan. Council, any questions? Thank you for bearing good news.
Right. Thank you all.
Tracy, did you have anything to add?
No, just a reminder, I went over the detail, the bonds that were sold were the REMAP bonds and then the Parks bonds that were voter approved in May, and then utility bonds for water and sewer projects. As Dan mentioned, it was we were very pleased with the results of the sale.
Nothing else, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed under this section, the consent agenda, are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and will be considered separately. Council, this is item 5A through 5Y. Are there any items that you wish to remove for separate consideration? I know that we talked about 5X. Is there anything else? All right. If not, I will entertain a motion for items 5A through 5Y minus 5X.
Make a motion for approval.
Second. Motion to second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis? Mayor Pro Tem Schneider? Councilmember Morales? Mayor Dunn?
Aye. And item 5X. Consider adopting a resolution authorizing matching grant support for the United Way of Central Texas in the amount of $20,000 for the implementation of an incentivized savings and financial literacy program for low to moderate income residents in Temple. And we
Mayor, I don't think I need a presentation. I've actually pulled it for voting. I won't give any personal reasons about the program, but from a council person looking at city funding and being responsible each year, public service agencies give presentations to the council to receive funding for their specific organizations. And as did this year, United Way presented, and I think they requested somewhere in the number of $47,000, somewhere in that neighborhood, of which I think we funded $10,000 of that through CDBG. Through that process, I think the city of Temple actually earmarked $408,000 this year in public services agencies. So I think the city of Temple is doing their part and doing a good job for those services. But at some point, we have a budget. And obviously, a lot of those requests were not given because of a budget. And the remainder of the United Way was cut because we didn't have it in the budget. We couldn't make the budget work, so we cut the budget. And now we're requesting $20,000 that's unbudgeted coming off the general fund, which I'm not in favor of, and to couple the fact with the potential loss of revenue that's planned from AMCOM. We have a potential loss losing that tenant, and if they leave in May, March, we stand to potentially lose $362,000 that we counted that we thought would be coming in this budget year. So, for those reasons, I'm not going to be for this item.
I think it's important, and I understand your point. However, I think looking at this particular program, it's an investment in our community, helping people to be able to be financially sound and productive. It also gives opportunity for people to be homeowners, which would be able to get people back on, and a lot of our houses back on the tax rolls, or they can go to school, which we need a educated workforce in our community. So it will provide those two options there that is missing in our community and would be able to help our citizens be able to be more productive and really pay back our taxpayers. They're taxpayers too. And so sometimes they're just having a harder time than other people. But I think through this particular program, it invests into people. It provides opportunity for them to be able to be financially sound and be able to be financially literacy, so that they will be able to be financially responsible in the future. And so I think with that, I understand that, you know, it would come out of our fund balance. So the funds can be there, but I wanted to see it as an investment in our citizens, investment in the future of our city, and also a way that we can open up other opportunities for a lot of our citizens.
I think as a council, we approve a lot of things. You know, we approve utilities and a lot of things that don't necessarily reach specific people. And I think this is an opportunity, although, Councilman Schneider, I hold your same philosophy, financial philosophy typically. I think this is a chance as the city, as a council, for us to reach into just a few people's lives and possibly make a difference. And, you know, I understand the AMCON situation. We just got good news on overall interest on bonds. And it's a relatively low amount, $20,000. In the scope of what we typically do is not a lot of money. And if this is a chance to, like I said, reach into just 10 people's lives and possibly make a real difference for even 5 of them, $20,000 to me is a fairly small investment. So I'll be voting for it.
Do we know if all of this money will be requested at once, and if will there be enough people that qualify or make application for it, or what if not all the money is expended? Will we get it back, or do we know?
Let me ask Tracy first, and I don't know if can we ask James to come up to answer a question, or should we go through Ashley?
I would first ask Ashley how the funds are dispersed to the United Way.
As a match, the funds would be dispersed all at once, and they would recruit people basically to enroll in the program, which they're already in the process of doing. So they would get the lump sum of funds. And they would have that, because that way they can draw it down from the federal side as well. So the $20,000 turns into $40,000 to be able to be used.
Time limit? Is that a hard and fast time limit that if the participant in the program doesn't meet their financial requirements, that money ends up coming back? What happens with that?
And Mr. Thurston, if we're not scheduled for a public hearing, but if you'll come up just so we can ask you this question, if that's all right.
Since I looked right at you, I guess.
I thought we were going to have to pass him the mic.
So, I'm sorry, Councilman, can you just ask the question one more time so I know how?
Whenever you were up here during the public comment period, you said you mentioned a 2-year time frame. So is that a hard and fast, you've got 24 months to get into the program, succeed, both through the classes and through saving their own $2,000 before they would receive the 2-to-1 match?
That's absolutely correct. So in order for them to be able to access the matching funds, they need to hit their savings goal. In most cases will be $2,000. There might be some education components where they don't need the full $2,000, so we could adjust that savings goal downward if appropriate.
That also adjust the match downward?
That would, yes. The match is, yeah, absolutely, is proportionate to the amount that they save.
Gotcha.
And so the program that we're operating under the federal rules has another 4 years left on it. We're setting up the average savings goal for the participants to be about 2 years. Now, if they need 2 years and a month, we can be flexible on that, and if as long as it's close to that, in some cases they won't take the full 2 years. And so if they don't do that, then we obviously don't need the full time. For any additional match funds that are obligated to a participant who drops out of the program, those funds will stay into that fund. They're obligated for that use. We will try to find another participant to use those match funds with during that time frame. We would expect to use all of that. I think that with what we're looking forward, we have a relatively small kind of group of people that we're looking at. Don't expect many problems with filling all of the slots, but if they do, I think United Way can make a commitment that we could return those funds to the city if there's anything that would be unused.
Real briefly, what's the screening process for the participants?
So in order to be eligible for the program, they have to meet the federal requirements. So it's 200% of the federal poverty line or less, or and I should say have less than $10,000 in net worth, excluding a home or a car. That's the rules the federal government uses. Or they can be eligible for TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or the Earned Income Tax Credit. So those are the federal rules that are required in order to be in. We also are paying close attention, building relationships. Many of the clients that we're enrolling in the program are folks that already have close relationships with our partners in the program. So we're really making sure through that screening process that there's a commitment to really want to make a substantive change, and that we can have a high level of confidence that they are going to be able to invest the time, energy, and resources it takes to be successful in order to access the funds.
Councilman Cloud, did you have any questions for Mr. Thurman?
I was wondering what if the money was not all expended, and Mr. Thurman said that it would be refunded back to the city then, so.
I asked a question, Mr. Morales, you said we're missing this part for education, as far as education and first-time home buyers. But I think we have other programs in Temple that do that as well.
But there's different guidelines. This one is specific.
Temple College,
Yeah.
and there's lots of those folks that
That's
do
true.
that as far as education.
Oh, sure.
And I'm not
And they're a
trying
partner in
to
this.
throw water on your deal. I'm just saying that we'd like to do every program potentially, but we can't. The money is just you got to stop somewhere, and that's where I'm coming from. And given the fact some of the other things that might come across the horizon, I just don't think it's financially responsible to do it that way.
I think that we do have to look at projects and decide which ones to pick and which ones we don't. I think that this is one that I would pick because I believe in the United Way, and I believe in the fact that they are trying to make an investment, as Councilmember Morales said, and any opportunity that we have as a community and as taxpayers to help encourage folks to become more active members of our society, whether through education so that they can get better jobs, whether it's through helping with home ownership so that then they become taxpayers or greater taxpayers. It eventually, if it all works correctly, then it should help the community out and the taxpayers in the long run, in my opinion. And that's why I'm supportive of this.
Could we stipulate that the participants that we help fund be citizens of Temple?
Yes. Okay. Sir, anything else? If not, I will entertain a motion on item 5X.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider? Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 6 on the regular agenda, first reading, consider adopting an ordinance designating a tract of land consisting of approximately 54.993 acres and located at 4141 Lucius McKelvey Drive, the City of Temple Tax Abatement Reinvestment Zone Number 32 for commercial industrial tax abatement.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have received another application for consideration of an abatement agreement. And you all know the first step in that process is actually designating the tax abatement reinvestment zone. This would be number 32. And first reading tonight, it is an ordinance. It's for commercial industrial tax abatement. The area is about 55 acres located on Lucius McKelvey Drive. And the applicant has an existing facility on the property, so this is a proposed expansion of that facility. And the application that we have received is requesting a 5-year, 100% tax abatement on the real property improvements involved with that expansion. And we plan to bring an item for your consideration on the tax abatement agreement at the October 15th council meeting. Here's a map of the area that would be in the tax abatement reinvestment zone. And just a reminder, as always, that Chapter 312 of the tax code requires that the city council make findings when creating a reinvestment zone, and some of those include that the zone will result in benefits to the city for the term of the agreement. It will likely result in the retention or creation of new jobs, will create new taxable value, and attract other major investment in the area. And we've reviewed the application, city staff reviews the application, and would recommend approval on first reading. And I'll answer any questions.
Is 100% tax abatement for 5 years, is that pretty typical? Typical request, or is that a high request?
I think you'd probably.
It's based on the dollar investment. You have a matrix that you've approved.
So the proposed level of investment for the expansion is a little over 11 million. So for that high level of investment, they do qualify. Asking. Mm-hmm.
Council, are there any more questions? And remind everyone that the second reading and the public hearing for this item will be set for October 15th. And I would entertain a motion on item 6.
Motion for approval?
Second.
A motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Quell?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 7, a first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing the annexation of approximately 282.73 acres of city-owned property located to the south of Little Flock Road and to the west of Bob White Road to be used for the future expansion of the City of Temple landfill. Mr. Chandler.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the first reading for ordinance, and just as a reminder, we have a special council meeting tomorrow, at which time the second reading will be held. And just to show you the property here at Little Flock, which is essentially an extension of East Avenue H and Bob White, and then looking southwest at that intersection at what the property looks like. As mentioned in the caption, this is for expansion of the future landfill, which is already city-owned. And just a quick reminder that what the schedule has, that you've seen already, per Chapter 43 of the Local Government Code, that included a July 30th approval for a petition for annexation, which also allowed for the development of a municipal service plan that was reviewed by all departments, and there were no issues. Then we had a public hearing on September 3rd, and then a second one on September 4th to review the municipal service plan. And, of course, we have the readings for the ordinance today and tomorrow. And just one important note that a future zoning case to allow for that landfill expansion would have to come before Planning and Zoning and City Council. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Council, any questions? This time I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being no one wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed. I'll entertain a motion on item 7.
Motion to approve item 7.
Second.
Motion is second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Quell?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 8, first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing an amendment to the tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 1 financing and project plans to appropriate additional tax increment revenue and expenditures for public improvements for fiscal years 2015 through 2062.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. In the work session today, I gave a detailed overview of the financing plan amendment, and also the chair of the reinvestment zone just gave you an overview of the project plans for the future. I have a presentation. I'd be happy to go over the details or answer any questions related to that. Or do you want a presentation?
I think we're okay without one because we had one upstairs, but if council, if there are any questions on any changes to it.
I would just note that it wasn't recommended for your approval in the reinvestment zone board on their September 23rd meeting.
This time I'll open the public hearing on item 8. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. All right. There being no one wishing to comment, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on item 8.
Motion for approval?
Second.
Motion is second, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider? Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 9, consider adopting a resolution, consider a resolution adopting amendments to the current policy on the naming of city parks, facilities, and streets. Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Yes, we're bringing some proposed amendments to our current parks and facilities naming policy. Right now, the current policy was adopted back in 2002. It covers parks, facilities, and streets. It requires Park and Recreation Advisory Board to review naming requests at a public meeting. Then it also allows for 30 days for public comment. And after those 30 days of the next Park and Recreation Advisory Board meeting, they will make a recommendation which will be brought to council. Some of the recent facilities or amenities that have been named is the Pasadena Building, the Charlie Stout Nature Trail in Lions Park, and the Hal P. Rose Tennis Center in Wilson Park. Some of our proposed changes, the current policy covers the naming of streets and non-park facilities. Staff is recommending that streets and non-park facilities not be considered by the Park and Recreation Advisory Board. Instead, let those requests come directly to City Manager's office and be brought to council for naming approval. The criteria used to determine whether a request should be approved would be the same criteria set forth in Parks and Recreation of the Parks Facility Naming Policy. Right now, the current policy states that a park or facility may be named based on location, for any geological, geographic, historical, or scientific feature inherent to that area, to honor a person who makes a substantial contribution, advancement, improvement, or enlargement of a park, or to show gratitude for a person who's donated his time or efforts to city parks in the community. Staff is proposing to add a 5th category to honor or recognize an individual or business that has made a significant impact to the advancement of their profession or industry here in Temple. As you can see there of the sign, the Drayton McLean Baseball Complex would be an example of something along those lines. Section 2 of the current policy addresses the naming of park or park facility after a living person or business. We just want to add some additional statements to that, but the person or business should have made a major contribution to Temple in either deed, volunteer service, or monetary contribution, and we like to add or have made a significant impact to the advancement of their profession or industry that would bring honor and high recognition to the city of Temple. So these individuals' accomplishments may not have happened here in Temple, but someone who went off to maybe be a high-ranking military official or a congressman or something along those lines, we want to recognize one of our own for their accomplishments out in the world. Section 2 also lists several evaluation criteria to consider: making a significant monetary contribution, achieved outstanding accomplishments for the good of the community, substantial contribution of volunteer service, and also make sure they had demonstrated fine moral character. And we would like to add, which goes along with the previous slide, achieved accomplishments of a very high nature and recognizable by many individuals on a state or local or national level. So again, they might be individuals that have gone off to do other things, but by honoring them, by naming a park, it brings a positive light onto our community. We don't like to have to rename a facility. I don't know that we've had to since I've been here, but if you do, if it does come to that, there won't be a process to rename a facility or a park. And we'd like to add the verbiage: the process to rename a park or park facility can be initiated by city staff, members of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, or concerned citizens. And finally, the current policy states the city manager must decide on the type, design, and size of its signage and staff is recommending amending the policy to allow the Director of Parks and Recreation to make the decisions regarding the signage. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I will entertain a motion on item 9.
Motion for approval?
Motion and a second, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider? Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 10, I'll read both A and B. Consider adopting a resolution authorization of an appeal of standards to Section 6.8 of the Unified Development Code for the first and third overlay district related to landscaping, sidewalks, and impervious cover for the renovation of an existing building at 420 North 3rd Street. And 10B, consider adopting a resolution authorizing a Chapter 380 development agreement with Pools Grocery in an amount not to exceed $40,800 for improvements to property located at 420 North 3rd Street within the North 3rd Street Strategic Investment Zone corridor. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we're going to start off with the appeal to the standards in the first and third overlay. And let's at least start with the location of the proposed Pools Grocery, which would be at the southwest corner of West Elm and North 3rd Street. You can see here in the aerial. And as mentioned, it's for a proposed grocery, but essentially converting an old filling station and most recently a print shop for that small neighborhood grocery use. And as you may recall, this is really just the second appeal to this first and third corridor overlay. Last one was about a year ago for the expansion of a used car dealership on South 1st Street. And so this appeal is specifically related to standards for impervious cover, sidewalks, and landscaping. And just to show you a map of the first and third overlay boundaries, and really just to draw your attention to the right portion, and this is a map directly taken from our code, the Unified Development Code. You can see the site location within this yellow area, which essentially means that it's in a frontage type A, which just basically means that that the sidewalk and planting strip, kind of the frontage standards, differ a bit for each of those frontage types. As you may recall, in terms of I-35 corridor overlay appeals, the first and third overlay is very similar, requires P&Z recommendation and then City Council approval. And for this particular project, all the standards within the overlay have been triggered related to the overall cost for the project, which far exceeds the 50% of the assessed value of improvements on the tax rolls. And so because it exceeds that threshold, all the standards have been triggered. And just to show you some photos, these are recent photos that also include some, they've done some roof work under a recent building permit and also some demolition as well that is really outside the scope of what's before you today. But this is looking, this is a east-facing elevation, so this is what you see along North 3rd Street. And this is looking north, so this is Elm behind this tractor. And you can see they're in the process in this photo of demolishing the old filling station canopy, which as of today was gone. And this is what you see today from Elm Street. Got a corrugated metal facade on this section, an existing tree that's proposed to be preserved as well. And just a kind of a close-up of what that building looks like today from that elevation. And this is the alley to the rear. And just another angle of that side so you can see what condition it's in currently. All right, so what's on the screen is the proposed site and landscape plan. So I want to quickly orient you to the improvements that are proposed. So looking at the site plan, which of course is rotated 90 degrees. So this is North 3rd, and this is Elm at the top. And so in terms of the frontage, what they're proposing is to add some landscaping, essentially 8-foot planting strips that would include rosemary and knockout roses, as well as Asian jasmine ground cover. There's an existing sidewalk here that would be reformed and stained concrete to really just distinguish it from the parking lot and really establish the pedestrian realm, if you will. They would still preserve a 20-foot wide drive aisle, two-way drive aisle. They would stripe 8 parking spaces, which you can see here, that would be framed by landscape parking islands that once again would include the rosemary and knockout roses, as well as red oaks. They would also add a drive-through for the grocery, which any item within the grocery that they sell would be available through that drive-through. And there would be some demolition of the metal addition that we looked at before, and also an addition to the rear. And in that location to the rear would be a screened dumpster, which is required by code, and they would do that through a masonry wall. And then at the bottom, just a quick elevation, you can see that that is a conceptual image of what it would look like after they add new stucco, repaint the facade, enclose those garage doors and create a storefront, and then add an awning, which would include the signage for Pools Grocery. And the bottom left-hand corner, you can see 2 pole signs that used to be on the property that have been recently removed, which were non-conforming signs. So it'll bring the signage into compliance as well. And so just to go over the appeal items that would have to be in the ordinance if approved, impervious cover. The code allows for non-residential properties within the overlay a limitation of 70%, which essentially is rooftop and pavement. That's kind of a basic definition of impervious cover. What is proposed is roughly 87%. And so just quickly, you can see an aerial, current aerial, and showing that approximately 95% of the site currently consists of impervious cover. And so you can see the green space that they're adding and we're proposing to add. Also, public frontage landscape standards. A 4-foot planting strip is required behind an 8-foot sidewalk. And so what the code requires, and I'll just jump down to this image, is having a 4-foot planting strip on the back side of the sidewalk. And what they're proposing is actually an 8-foot planting strip between the curb and an existing sidewalk that they would propose to refurbish. Also, river rock is required within that planting strip, and as mentioned, they propose to add a little greenery, Asian jasmine. And if you just look at this image here, this is actually from West Adams in front of the public library. You can see that essentially that's the landscaping palette that they propose. Asian jasmine with rosemary and knockout roses. As I mentioned, the frontage standards also require an 8-foot sidewalk between the curb and the landscape strip. And if you look at this image here, you can see that they're really just proposing to keep that sidewalk that is there and improve it, which lines up with that adjacent shoe repair company. And so you see here in gray that if they were to comply with that standard, essentially you'd have that sidewalk that doesn't line up with the sidewalk adjacent to it. And by the code, section 6.8.6E, sidewalks must connect to existing adjacent sidewalks. And so that's what we're proposing to preserve that, yet enhance that existing sidewalk, reforming it. Private property landscaping, and we talked about impervious cover, which is limited to 70%. And what the code requires essentially is that the balance of that, the remaining 30%, be all landscaping. And so while they're proposing about 87% impervious cover, that means that they only have 13% left over for landscaping according to the proposed site plan. And I think it's important to mention that this is a small lot. This is 8,250 square feet with, of course, that existing structure that they're demolishing small portions of, but that structure currently covers about 60% of the lot. And so there's just limited space, and we've been working with the applicant to try to fit as much greenery as possible while still preserving necessary parking spaces and drive access. Foundation planting is required along public-facing facades, at least 50% of those facades. Really, with a 4-foot depth for those planting beds, and once again, just in terms of the amount of space on the site, what is proposed is really just to be able to accomplish that through the green that you see on the screen, and those are the landscaped parking islands. There really just is not sufficient room to add an additional planting strip adjacent to the foundation and still preserve access and parking. A quick compliance summary with what they do propose to comply with and the standards that include permanent irrigation, qualifying trees and shrubs, adding the 8-foot planting strip, just not in the location required, but that actually exceeds the 4-foot width required. The signage in terms of removal of pole signs and screening of dumpster and mechanical equipment, as well as burying the utility lines that connect on the private property, connect to the building as required by code. And so the overall project scope, in addition to an interior finish out and the partial demolition we talked about, facade renovation, adding the drive-through, removal of the pole signs, and new irrigated landscape, but also just to mention that, of course, Part B of this is for a strategic investment zone grant application. Staff recommends approval of the appeal for the following reasons: that we've been working very closely with the applicant to meet the intent of the overlay standards while still preserving adequate parking and pedestrian and vehicle access and circulation. P&Z recommended unanimous approval at their September 21st meeting. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on that part before proceeding on to the strategic investment zone portion of the presentation. Okay. All right, just a quick map showing all of the projects that have been funded within the strategic investment zones. And so what is shown actually in gray is also the first and third corridor overlay. And so you have two different boundaries, and so I think that's important to point out. But of the 34 projects that have been funded, which you see on this map, 2 of them have been in the adopted first and third corridor overlay. There was a United Way project in 2013, and actually the other one predated the adoption of the corridor overlay. And so for the grant application before you, the applicant has requested $40,800, which is part of a reimbursement and match grant program. This is for a proposed $180,000 and $345 project that, of course, we described in quite a bit of detail in the previous section. And so the items that they've applied for that are eligible for grant reimbursement are applying new stucco to the entire building, the painting and storefront, additions of the glass and awning, removal of the pole signs, installation of signs on the awnings and building, the installation of the planting areas, removal of the existing steel canopy, and reforming the sidewalk and staining the concrete. And just important, I think, to note that the two in yellow indicate items where they're exceeding the code, particularly on the masonry and the facade, the fact that they're proposing to stucco the entire building. The first and third overlay does not address the facade. They could leave that facade in its current condition by code. And then also the painting and the storefront addition of windows and awnings is not required by the code. Also, I think it's important to point out that numbers 5 and 7, those are items that were addressed in the appeal related to the planting and the sidewalk. And of course, they would have to enter into an agreement with the city that addresses everything from completing the work in a timely manner to giving the city the right to inspect the work and the financial records. We do require invoices for the reimbursement, and so all the records are closely examined. Also performing all the work described in the agreement per city codes and regs, and maintenance of those improvements in the future. So for this amount, staff recommends approval with one condition, and that is that the property owner understands he is responsible for maintaining the new landscaping, which includes weed prevention and removal within the North 3rd Street right-of-way. Since right-of-way maintenance is not a typical responsibility outside of an overlay, we just want to make sure that we reinforce that with the approval if council does decide to do that, and I think we would like to do that for future CIS grant projects as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Scott Horsack, the applicant, is here as well, and he could certainly answer any other questions you might have if I'm unable to.
Council, any questions? Comments? Or if not, I will entertain a motion on item 10A.
Make a motion for approval for 10A.
Second.
Motion approval on, motion and second on item 10A. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider? Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. And I will entertain a motion on item 10B.
Motion to approve item 10B.
Second.
A motion and a second on item 10B. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider? Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 11, consider adopting a resolution. 11A, canvassing the results of the Temple Police Association certification election. And 11B, recognizing the Temple Police Association as the sole and exclusive bargaining agent for the police officers and determining that the city may meet and confer under Chapter 142 of the Local Government Code, or deferring recognition and ordering an election by voters in order to determine whether the city may meet and confer. Landeros.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We went through the presentation in workshop. I can go through it again if you wish. Answer any questions that you have.
Really good presentation, but I think we're good, unless y'all need to see it again. All right. And
Any questions? It is two separate motions again, and you have some proposed language.
I don't have any questions, but I'd like to make a comment, if I may. In July and before that, I mentioned that I felt that this was ill-advised and ill-timed, and I, quite frankly, have not changed my opinion on that. I think that fundamentally this is, I'm I think fundamentally I have a problem with this. But I've struggled with it because I have 98 police officers in the city of Temple that think this is a good idea. And when the gentleman from Cleat goes to another community and leaves Temple and tells everybody what a good idea this is, I'm still going to be here along with the community, and we still have a police department that needs to know that as a city council and as a city entity that we are supportive of the police department, and we appreciate everything that you do. Things are changing in the police department, as evidenced with the new chief, and it's, I think a new page has turned. Over the past few months, over the past year, Mr. Graham has had an open door policy for the police officers. We certainly, as a council, we work for all citizens, and so we certainly have an open door policy for folks that want to talk to us. There has been, in the last budget, we actually voted for what I think would be a significant pay increase for most folks. I think the thing that bothered me the most is that I think that we have been willing to work with the police department, and after the fact, I think I even used the term, it's almost a slap in the face, because y'all are saying, well, you've done these things for us, however, we would like to have it in writing that you would visit with us in the future, even though we have continued to try to do that. But I thought about something my good friend Benny Walsh said, who's sitting in the audience, and I think that moving forward, I don't know if I really want to wait until May with uncertainty and the possibility of any disgruntled or distrust in the police department. And I would say that in this situation, we need a community in unity, like Benny said, because we do respect you and we do appreciate you. And if a motion were made to allow meet and confer, then I would support it this evening. And I just wanted to get my 2 cents in. So
I too had concerns. I guess I don't really understand the need for a second entity making decisions when we have a police chief answering to the city manager, answering to the council. I don't know why we need another level of government in there, if you will. And that's why I had somewhat of a problem last time with that. I'm not too sure it should be our decision whether we support it or not. It makes a lot of sense for the citizens to make that decision. Unfortunately, there's a weight involved, and I hope that wouldn't mean a level of distrust on the council. But some things may be better off left to the public to decide whether we do that or not.
I think as you mentioned, the timing of it coming up was not right, and now we're looking at, if we do give it to the vote of the citizens, would be next May, that is a long time off, and that gets into the timing issue also, I think.
Adopting the meet and confer doesn't change anything that we're doing already. It's just formalizing. Correct?
Well, it really sets up a process to formalize agreements on certain issues.
But it sets up.
You're right.
It sets up the ability to meet if we want to, but not decide anything. So I could
Additional
give-
meetings for staff.
I could give you the
discussion.
same thing, and it would, but in the interest of making folks feel better. So, we have a lot of business in the city of Temple, and I would rather have the opportunity to put this behind us and move forward as a unified police department and community. And so, if there are no more comments, then I'll entertain a motion on item 11A, which is canvassing the election.
I make a motion to canvass the election, the results of the Temple Police Association certification election.
Second.
A motion and second on item 11A. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. And item 11B, and there is specific language for those depending on which motion y'all would like to make, if you'd like to make one.
I make them, go ahead.
I make a motion to recognize the Temple Police Association as the sole and exclusive bargaining agent for Temple police officers and to adopt the meet and confer process under Chapter 142 of the Texas Local Government Code.
Have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
No.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Item 12, consider adopting a resolution appointing members to the following City of Temple boards and commissions. And we have one, the Airport Advisory Board, which is one member, which has to be a reinvestment zone representative to fill an expired term through September 1st, 2018. And would like to it's been suggested by the RZ that Tyler Johnson sit on the Airport Advisory Board. And B, the Reinvestment Zone Number 1 Board of Directors, one member to fill an unexpired term through September 1st, 2017, and it is the Elm Creek Water District representative, and Calvin Sanders has been recommended to take that position from Elm Creek. So I will entertain a motion on item 12A and B.
Motion to approve as read.
Second.
A motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. And before I adjourn the meeting, Mr. Graham, is there an introduction that you'd like to make?
Mayor, I would love to. I think it's not a secret that a few weeks ago, our new police chief, Floyd Mitchell, took office, and as a result of a very lengthy process in which we interviewed and sought candidates from across the country, in which a consultant vetted all of our candidates, and our new police chief sat through 3 panels that we put together and an interview with me. And as a result of that, Mr. Mitchell is our new police chief, and I'm very pleased to present him to you today.
Thank you, Chief. We're happy to have you here. If there is nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.